Hey there, it's Chris, and welcome back to the start of week 3 of our Spartan Ultra training. And I figured we're doing a little something different this time, so just going to go for a light jog today. As I said, one of the runs this week was going to be a real light one, so while we have this nice daylight and stuff out here, we're not doing it at night, might as well make it on this one. So, the purpose of this discussion is it's going to be all about the Zone 2 running and heart rate based running, which I had mentioned on the very first video. I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff based on heart rate and using a heart rate monitor. Well, today we're going to discuss kind of what we're going into that, some of the pros and cons of doing Zone 2 running, and kind of understand what it is, how can it benefit us, and why it's one of the most controversial things you're going to find on really YouTube or anywhere else if you're actually looking this stuff up. So, first thing I want to discuss is something just to keep in the back of your mind. When I'm thinking of cardio type stuff and anything to do with cardio, I'm generally looking at two aspects of my physiology I'm trying to get to work. One of them is going to be effectively, like I mentioned in the first video, we're going quick because I kind of want to blow out and really open up and widen the circulatory system, the arteries, capillaries, veins, all of that. You can think of those as like your highways to your cells. If you make them wider, you make them easier to go through, cleaner, you can get more energy, more resources to your cells. That said, within the cells themselves, we have the mitochondria. This is where your power source comes from. So one of the things we want to do is the more mitochondria we can fit into the cells, the more power we can access, which will make performing work easier. In this case, it's going to be running. That would be our work. So those are the two things we're going to try to focus on during these workouts. So keep that in the back of your mind. Let these cars pass. There are usually no cars in this area, so this is kind of interesting. Anyway, Zone 2, and where that kind of comes from is as we perform more work, as we perform greater intensities of work, our body physiologically changes to adapt to that. If we're doing like light jogs, kind of go for a walk, easy kind of going, we're generally producing our energy and burning off fats and whatnot is our main energy source. As we start getting faster, start running a little more, our body jumps off of the fats and starts using our glucose reserves for energy. And then as we keep going above that, we'll eventually get into like an equilibrium there. It keep going faster and faster. Eventually it breaks down and we can't get the energy we need to perform the work we need to do, and it all kind of falls apart in the end. So where each of these thresholds kind of lie, the breakdown at the top end, where we jump from the fat usage to glucose usage and all that, there's a very handy kind of shorthand method for figuring out what these things are, and that's using our heart rate. You can go into like a human performance center, get yourself tested. You can find where these kind of thresholds are, but a good shorthand for real-time data on this is going to just using a heart rate monitor, and there are kind of general zones you can use to determine this. So although there are 5, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 being the lightest, kind of easiest walking, jogging you can possibly do, to 5 being like the all-out sprint, your heart rate is going through the moon. The one we're going to be focused on is the second zone, Zone 2. And the reason that one's important is because at the top end of Zone 2 and the bottom end of Zone 3, that line right between the two, this is where the body is going to transform from using fats to using the glucose reserves. And this is a very critical juncture that's super, super helpful to know about. Now, when I said I wanted to do these first 2 weeks of practices at the going on a quicker end of the spectrum, to make everything work, to kind of make all our cells loosey-goosey, to get the heart rate up. We wanted to expand our circulatory system. Going quick is going to be really good at kind of widening up the circulatory system, your veins, capillaries, arteries. We're going to make that superhighway as wide as it can possibly be. And at the same time, for performing more work, the body is going to do anything it can to produce more mitochondria, to get used to doing more work. So you think this is kind of a win-win. Let me change arms, that was getting tired. So you'd think that would be a win-win on this spectrum. Unfortunately, once you start going faster and you move from the fats to the glycose reserves, one of the downsides of that is one of the waste products, or the main waste product your body produces when using the glycose, the glycogen, whatever, your sugar reserves, that's going to be lactic acid. Now, the downside of lactic acid is that's going to stunt your ability for the mitochondria to grow. Think of it as like if you live out in the suburbs or country or whatnot, and you're going and planting new grass on the ground, you're always told, don't walk on the grass for a couple weeks, let it get its roots in there, let it grow a bit first before you do anything to it. The same kind of deal. On the one hand, your body is trying to produce more mitochondria to account for more work, but the second you get the lactic acid buildup, it kills it all. It stunts its growth. So what we're trying to do with zone 2 training is we want to go as fast as we possibly can without triggering our body to use the glycogen and to start producing lactic acid. So we want to get as much work as possible without accidentally inhibiting the work that we're aiming this for. So where I had said before that yes, my runs were averaging probably around a 720 to 730 per mile pace. I'm just doing what I'm doing. Well, zone 2 is slow. I'm going to be dropping those down to like a 10-minute mile or slower at the start. It's going to go way slower. And the downside of that is because I'm no longer pumping the heart as hard to push all the veins, the arteries and all that, to expand all them. As I do these types of practices, as I focus on these really slow runs to build up mitochondria, all the rest of the circulatory system, if it's not being put in use, it's going to contract again. So this is the reason I wanted to spend the first 2 weeks going faster, was to bulk it back up a little bit, so that for these next couple weeks, when I'm doing purely zone 2, I'm going to be doing purely zone 2 stuff for the next 3 weeks. I'm not going to do anything fast. Every single workout is going to be in this slow range. And I'll get to that in a second. But what's going to happen is it's going to contract a little bit again, and it's going to inhibit the amount of nutrients that can then get to the mitochondria and get to the cells. But our goal now is to build up the mitochondria. So, as a shorthand, how could we determine where this is? Well, there are a couple of numerical models we can use for this. And I'm going to say the one I'd gone on, because I'd gone off of one before I learned the really dumb, short and easy way, is you take your maximum heart rate and subtract your minimum heart rate from it. So the shorthand for your age, if you don't want to do any testing whatsoever, is you're going to say take 220 minus your age, and you're going to be close to what it is. It's not going to be exact. You're going to get close. So for me, let's say, just to keep numbers really, really simple, let's say I'm 40. That would be a maximum heart rate of about 180. And the average human adult has a low heart rate of around 60. Now, if you're athletic, it's gonna drop, it can drop significantly far below that. But for me personally, once I start getting in shape, I can usually drop it down to around between 45 and 47. I've had it touch 41 once. On a good day, I could usually get mid-40s. Average day, I'm probably around that 50 mark. So again, just to keep the numbers really nice and simple, let's say I have a high end of 180 and a low end of 50. That's going to give an active heart rate zone of 130. Now, our purpose of this is just to go over that zone 2 threshold. So without going to the others, we're going to be looking at aiming at around 70% of our active range. So easier way to do math is you can say 10% of 130 is 13. 113 times 3 is going to be 39. So take 39 or subtract 39 from 180, and that's going to give me 141 would be the target I'm going for then for my heart rate when I do these types of runs. Now, you can do those types of workouts or do those types of calculations. I will give you a heads up, finding the upper end of your heart rate is not as simple as doing a 100-yard dash and reading your heart. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. One method, again, I found the way I can find my highest is I've done repeat kind of distance events or kind of repeat speed things, like a half mile kind of speed event, jog for a half mile, quarter mile speed, jog for a quarter mile, and then go all out for like a 200, and that will pop up the heart rate higher than you will if you just do a straight run. And I can get mine over 180 still, so I'm still feeling pretty good. My heart's like 7 years younger than it's supposed to be, which is great. But as a generality, you can kind of use those numbers, or if you want the really, really dumbed down version of what you can do to find that target heart rate you're going for, is you can take 180 minus your age, and that'll give you your dumbed down version of the heart rate you're looking for. But you can go to a human resource center or fitness center kind of thing and get this tested and get a real number for yourself, depending if you want to go serious into this or not. But for me, it's around that 140 mark. In theory, it's closer to 137, but again, my heart has a higher range, so it actually bumps my thing up a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of what my target's going to be. Now, as I said, so from this, so again, why is this controversial? Why do people say this? So you think, okay, I'm building all the mitochondria, this is great. There's no downside to it. The downside, again, like I said, the downside to doing this is you may build up the energy producers in your cells, the mitochondria, but by not really engaging the rest of the circulatory system and having it shrink, you'll actually slow down. So if you're doing purely zone 2 over an extended period of time, you're actually going to get slower for any kind of shorter race that you have. So if you're training for like a 5K, a 10K, something like that, this may not be super helpful. However, if you want longer races, figure half marathon or above, this can be great. Because the body has about, I think I've seen somewhere between hour 20 and hour 30 of the glucose reserves. And after that, no matter what, you're going to run out. You're going to be basing your stuff off of fats at that point. So getting the body used to using fat as its energy source, getting it better, more efficient at breaking that down, not producing lactic acid. Again, for the race that I'm preparing for, which is an ultra-marathon distance obstacle course race that takes place on ski slopes in the mountains, this is fantastic, because there is no speed whatsoever in that kind of race. So I don't need to worry about speed. For me, my biggest concern is breaking down that lactic acid. or not even have to deal with the lactic acid in the first place. So for me, zone 2 is going to be my main driver for the rest of this training. Generally speaking, most of my runs during the weeks are going to be zone 2. And although I'll be getting into why my distance runs are not going to be zone 2 later on, but that's more of a me personal thing rather than an actual training thing. But yeah, if you want to follow along with me on this, be prepared. This could hurt your short-term or shorter race kind of mentality, but in the end, it will be worth it. That said, after these first 3 weeks, I'm treating this like new grass we just planted. For the first 3 weeks, it's only zone 2. That's it. Because I want the new mitochondria reforming. I want it to get hard enough to be able to survive the first time we need to introduce lactic acid into the mix. So after those 3 weeks, then we can start introducing faster workouts back into the mix again in moderation. Again, but this is if you have like other races on your schedule, if you have other things you want to do, if you want to do like a 10K, a half marathon or something coming up, for sure you're going to start your season off doing these really slow kind of runs, build up the mitochondria, and as the season progresses through, we're going to be introducing more and more kind of speed elements into this. You can have your sprints, you can have your ladder workouts, you can just have straight longer runs. It can be whatever. But I think what a lot of people get wrong on this is they look at zone 2 and say, oh, I'm only going to do that. And if you only do this, it's a very double-edged sword. For my particular race, for something like Vernon, for something like Killington, something like Tahoe, Big Bear out in California, any of these really, really mountain-type courses, this is going to be fantastic for if you want to do like an ultra down like Dallas or the Carolinas or somewhere where it's like dead flat. This may not be as effective because speed is going to be more of an issue on those than is on these. But yeah, I don't think it's better or worse than other stuff. I think it's just another tool to have in your toolbox. I wouldn't live just off of this type of thing, depending on whatever race you're doing. But just think of this as a tool in your toolbox you can use. Generally speaking, go heavy on it early on in the season, and you can wean off and get into faster stuff as you get closer to whatever events you're doing. That said, in the very first episode, I had said my hardest week of the year is going to be 3 weeks before my race. That doesn't mean I'm taking the final 3 weeks off. What's going to happen for those final 3 is now that I've been doing primarily zone 2 stuff up until that point, yes, I will have other things thrown in. The final 3 weeks are going to be very similar to these first 2 weeks I just did. I'm going to shrink those workouts down. I'm going to make them shorter again, and I'm going to make them fast. Because after spending 4 months worth of time building up mitochondria, making it stronger, making it denser, getting more energy producers in the cells, I need to rewiden those highways again. So I'm going to be pushing the blood through. I'm going to give one final push to then, get the heart rate pumping one more time to really open up my circulatory system so that I can actually feed all the energy producers that I've been creating throughout the course of the training session. So that's kind of where we are right now. I'm going to leave it at that. We can go more into the zone training next time, but once again, as a homework assignment for this coming week. This coming week, I will jump up to 5 workouts for the week. I'm going to have probably 3 weekday runs, 2 weekend runs, and just like before, I'm going to have 3 main workouts, a Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Saturday will be my designated long one. I'm not going to make any more distance changes to them. Distance will for one final time kind of be the same, doing these 3.5, 4 mile runs. because we're adding the extra mile. We're adding one more run per week. We're getting our more mileage that way. And then the following week, we're going to start upping the averages. So the only difference now is rather than going like the 730, 720 miles I've been doing, obviously not today, but I'm now going to be dropping those down to what's probably going to be about a 10 to 1020 per mile. Cold weather doesn't help. Middle of summer doesn't help. Cold weather doesn't help either on these things, but it is what it is. But yeah, figured I'd just rather than sit in my room, I might as well go for a jog while doing this. Hopefully you're not sick watching this thing. But that's where we are right now. And next time we'll go from there. So I hope this helped introduce you to the concept. I would highly recommend looking more into Zone 2 if you're interested in heart rate stuff, seeing if it is right for you, if it's not right for you. For this very specific event, it's going to be great. But for other events that might be on your list, it may not be so much. So I would highly recommend doing your own research and seeing for yourself if this is the type of thing that's right for you, and if you want to follow along with me in the end. So that's where we are right now, and I'll catch you next week. All right, till then, enjoy. Hey, so now I finished running. Two quick things I want to bring up that I didn't think about during the previous recording session. And the first is, it's glucose. It's not glycose, it's not glycogen, it's glucose. Yeah, sometimes the brain just kind of hit that roadblock halfway through, and ever since then it just woo the rest of the way. It just wasn't going to happen. So yeah, that's when you start moving faster, you're burning off your glucose reserves. That's what it is. Otherwise, if you've never done a Zone 2 run before, if you want to give this a shot and see what it's like, it's actually a lot harder to run as slow as you need to maintain that heart rate than what you might think it is, especially if you're going on like any kind of incline, even like a 1 or 2% grade. For like the first 2 weeks I did this when I first started trying a Zone 2 thing way back when, I had to walk up those things. Eventually the heart gets used to it, but those first couple times, any kind of incline you have or anything might happen, you may need to walk a little bit to get your heart rate back into the zone you want to be in. And that's 100% fine and kind of expected for the first couple outings out there, first couple weeks out there, as your body kind of gets used to this. But it does get used to it. It does get stronger and better as it goes. But no, be prepared. You might need to walk up some things, and that's going to be 100% fine. Otherwise, that's all I want to throw out there. And yeah, have fun and good luck, and I will catch you next week. So until then.